Yo,
Yo,
what do you want to talk about today?
let's talk about skipping steps and why it's important when you're building your offer to go in some sort of a predetermined order. Because if you start at the end, you're not going to have clarity. You're going to be confused. And the way that you've built your offer and that you train people on building their offers is very processized. And that's obviously come about from tons of iterations. So let's talk about that order and like, why is this the order that you've settled on? And how is it like, what happens when people skip forward?
I think everything has an order. Like even to the content creation stuff.
Yep.
There's an order. There's like a suggested order of operations for everything, but you don't know you're skipping steps until someone points it out to you.
Right. Okay. So I come to you. I've got tons of experience and I am struggling to turn that scattered expertise into some sort of an offer that's clear. What's step one?
Well, before we even go into what step one is, what step one is in my system versus what most people see step one is.
Right.
A lot of people go straight to building their service. Like here's the thing you need. Here's the thing that I do. And I think that's not helpful in the grand scheme of things. You need to do that. It's it helps root your thinking. But most of the time, and I'm guilty of this in the past, which is you end up building the wrong thing.
I'm guilty.
Or you just build the thing and it's just like it's not totally wrong, but it's like not really where it didn't end up where you needed to be once you look at the problem.
Yeah.
And you understand exactly what your buyer is thinking about and considering and how they see it. You probably end up, it's usually because you bloat it. You add too much shit to it. And so that tends to be problematic for people because they're super focused on what they're going to do, the actual service they're going to provide, not thinking that how am I going to get anybody to want this?
Right.
Does anyone care about this thing? Is it going to make a difference? Do we need to do all these steps? Like all those types of questions. So generally that's where most people end up, but I order it in a super simple way. Instead of building out a whole service, the question is not like, what is the service? It's just, what can you do? What's your core competency? Like, it's just like, say the words, I can, and then say the thing you can do. Say, okay, cool. We have rooted our thinking and our entire premise in this one idea.
Okay.
So as you go and explore your problem and you go and explore this and talk to people, like you're rooted in this one concept of the thing you can do. Because people will be like, oh, like there's this huge problem. Like software's bloated. And it's like, well, I'm not an engineer, so I can't solve that problem. It's like, well, then that's like, you need to root yourself in your core competency.
Okay. So I think something we deal with a lot that I personally deal with as well is, what if you can do 5 things really well?
You probably don't love all 5 of them equally. All 5 of them probably don't make a difference to the same degree. They're probably not all equally as impactful.
Yeah. I love that. What's that phrase you say all the time? Your offer is at the intersection between what you can do and what people are willing to pay for. Something like that.
Close. Yeah. It's the revenue's at the intersection of the problem you solve and your access to people with that problem.
Nice. The access to people with that problem really got me when we first started working together. Because I was like, okay, I can do all these things, but who do I have access to? And that totally shifted. And then I went a level deeper. It's like, who do I have access to? And who do I actually want to be spending my time with? Right? Like, because it's also like, you say this too, you have so many good one-liners, Nick. You're like, if you're not like willing to roll out of bed in the morning and do what you can do for free, then you're picking the wrong thing that you can do. Like, you have to be passionate about it, or else why are you building a business around it? Right?
You're going to be pretty pissed off pretty quick if you don't like doing the work. And the litmus test is, would you do it for free?
Right. So
I'm not saying do it for free. I'm saying, would you?
I started asking myself, because I can edit blogs very well. I can help editorial teams, write better guidelines. I can connect strategists, strategy to execution very well. I can do all these things. I started picturing my life as a consultant that was going into teams and helping them do that. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. And I would certainly not do this for free. Never. And then I started thinking about solopreneurs or like independent contractors, people who are building digital businesses. And I was like, oh, like I want to work with those people. I'm super passionate about that. I totally help them if they needed to for free. Like that lights me up. And that helped me so much. It's such a simple concept, but it helped me so much. I was so stuck on, I've just spent 5 years as a head of content. So I can do, like, I can do all these things. And then I was like, do I want to? And that was mind blowing somehow. In that moment, it was just, whoa.
Well, conventional business wisdom is like, just do some shit. Like, it's too simple to fall into it. It's much easier to fall into the trap of like, just do all the things for all the people.
Right.
It's so much easier to do that and think, and not consider what the other options are.
Right.
You hadn't considered working with solopreneurs until we talked about it. You were like, oh shit, that's an option. It's like,
even though I was
options.
selling courses to them.
Well, because conventional business wisdom was like, you're a consultant, so you must sell to teams, to businesses, to do the content thing, because we're also you're like pre-wired by your previous company.
Right.
And it's not, this is a bad thing. It's just reality. You're pre-wired by that company, or just like your environment, and that you sell to a certain type of team or a certain type of business, that the work looks a certain way.
Yeah.
And then it's not until you leave that and some time goes by and you realize that there is no box, there are no rules, right? There is no spoon.
And I'm like the least stick me in a box person ever. Like everything I do is unconventional. And I still fell for that mental trap of, well, might as well, like, I got to just do what I was just doing in-house, and I'm just going to go in as a consultant now. Like, that was just like the path.
Yeah. Well, so this is why the access meter is like so powerful. It's such an unlock for people, because most of the time we're going to spend a lot of our life chasing a buyer we don't have access to. Now, can you break into markets? 1,000,000,000%.
Mm-hmm.
But you gotta try. And it's not as simple as just writing on LinkedIn for SaaS founders.
Yep.
You have to understand their life.
Yep.
Better than they do. Just saying, SaaS founders, have you considered this? I mean, like, will some SaaS founders, will it resonate with them? Sure.
Yeah.
But are you going to become known there as the person who helps SaaS founders achieve the thing or solve the problem?
I have an anecdote for this as well. Right after we started kind of jamming through this was like a year ago-ish, I think. It's April. I think, didn't we meet I think we met in April or May. Anyway, April was the Golden Hour event last year. And I went there and I started aerating this issue with heads of content that were there. And I just started asking them, like, hey, do you have these problems that I think I can solve? And it was really hard to find someone who had a problem that they would then like pay a consultant to come in and solve, that they couldn't solve themselves on their team. Like, my skills, they are needed, but it felt like they were needed more in-house than what I could provide. I would have had to pivot way more to strategy. Like, my original idea was, I'm just going to go in and like train writers and editors to be better. And it just, like, I was going to do workshops and stuff. It wasn't clicking. And that was the first time that I was like, oh, I just spent all this time getting the signal that like what I'm doing is actually not really needed in the way that I thought it was. I would have to, like, I was trying to like squeeze it in. Like, oh, you might need it in this way or that way. And I left that place being like, oh, like, damn, I don't, and do I even want to? And it was a really brilliant moment being able to talk to people and asking them, what are you actually struggling with? And realizing, maybe there's not a need. And also, do I even want to? And that was a really important shift that I don't think I would have gotten from LinkedIn. Like, I needed to just talk to people in person or on the phone and just ask them, which is another step that I think people skip. Like, do you actually need the thing I'm trying to do?
Right. Is the urgency.
Right.
Is there urgency here? Not the type of urgency we talked about recently when you think like, how do you increase scarcity and urgency and like put pressure on a sale to close a deal, that type of thing. Like true urgency in the business that if we solve this problem, it'll make a material impact on this business,
right,
in our life. And some problems are just not urgent, period. Yep. There are many problems in life that are not urgent. They are valid problems, but we can solve them later.
Right, exactly.
We can just solve them whenever we want. That's a huge hurdle. Now, can you make them urgent? Most definitely. Okay. That's where, but this is the whole market conditioning thing. Like, how do you get people to really want to opt in to your point of view? Right. To adopt your point of view on the problem. That's how you're going to get people to want to solve it now. But there's this weird tension between doing that and the work that it takes to create that level of urgency around a problem and condition the market around the problem. And I just need this to work now. Yeah. I want the money now. Yeah, yeah. And also what I was seeing in the market was what I could do for in-house teams was something that they could easily do themselves if they just spent the time to do it. What they really needed help with was things that they didn't necessarily have all the skills in themselves, which is at the time founder brands are just like coming up on the up and up. And they were much more interested in founder brand training than can you help me make my editing and writing team better? Like they can do that. They just weren't putting the resources into it because they didn't quote unquote have the time. Like they could make the time for that. You know what I mean? For sure. I think there's this other more subtle thing that's going on here, which is, but it makes a big difference. Mm-hmm. Make your editing better. Better is incremental. Right. Better is a trap. Yep. And when it's incremental, it's very meh. 100%. A lot of us fall into the better trap because it feels simple. It's like, well, why wouldn't anyone want their editing to be better or make their blogs better? Like, yeah, everybody wants that, but no one, how much is that worth? How much is an incremental change worth versus an exponential one? Right. Yeah. I will always advocate for different over better. It's huge. That talk to me more about that, because our biggest feedback for people in full stack as well is like, don't say better. Don't say I'm going to make you more money. Don't say I'm going to help you become viable. Like these things they're so intangible and hard to pin an ROI on. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just weak. Yeah. I think it's just weak languaging. And languaging is really where you're going to make or break your offer. The words you say, how are you going to get people to agree with your premise? How do you get other people to say those words? Yep. How are you going to get people, how are those words are going to make an impression on people? Yep. And if you're saying, we should hire Erica, she's going to make our blogs better, people are going to be like, so what? Right. And I can talk about the so what, but I couldn't talk about that with as much confidence as I needed to solve that. It's just, you're not going to get much attention by saying the blogs will be better. They're going to be like, hey, there's a lot of There's a lot of ways to make the blogs better. We can run them through ChatGPT. We can hire someone on Fiverr. Like there's a billion different things that like better invites comparison. This is the other part about this.
Mm.
Better, everyone is fighting over better. And this is the one thing. This is like one of the few things I actually disagree with the guys at Fletch with, is they're always talking about like, well, what makes your product better? And I disagree, and I just don't think that anyone necessarily cares about the better aspect of it. I think it's more so what makes your product different, but I think that's semantics. I think we're probably trying to just say the same thing in the way that they
So
define
many
it.
arguments, especially in our B2B world, come down to semantics. It's
Yeah,
insane.
It really does.
Grown adults arguing over semantics all day on LinkedIn, acting like
Yeah.
toddlers.
This is fair. This is true. But I think the words matter. And if you were to try and tell people that you're better, I think you're going to have a much harder time trying to show people how much value you're capable of creating.
Yeah.
Because better is incremental. So anyway,
let's circle back.
Yeah, we've already lost the plot here. So the whole point here is to do things in a logical order. And I don't expect people to know the order without seeing it.
Yeah.
But I think so. I'm gonna break down the order for you.
So what happens after I can? Yeah. What's next?
Right. What's your core competency? What can you do? This roots your thinking. Then we say, okay, here's the thing we can do. What's the problem we're gonna solve? Now, framing a problem is like equal parts art and science.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it starts with this simple concept: what do your buyers want? What end result is meaningful to them? What are the 5 to 10 things? What are the 5 to 10 problems that they're suffering from, that they experience right now?
Okay.
Right. We just start there.
So let me just ask, if I'm someone who has all this expertise, but I actually haven't really spent too much time talking to the customer. I think a lot of people get stuck here. They're like, hey, Nick, I think that these are the problems that they're having, but how do I know for sure? What if I go after the wrong problem? What do you say to them?
Yeah, you probably will go after the wrong problem. That's what I say to them. So you're probably going to pick the wrong one.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is pick the weirdest one, pick the one that you think is the most valuable one. What we're trying to do, this is an exercise in framing,
Mm-hmm.
right? I always use the term like the mental scaffolding. Like this is an exercise in just understanding all of the forces. No one problem lives in total isolation. But I tell people, it's like pick one to solve, because it's basically one of them is going to most clearly capture all of like a combination of those 5 to 10 that they're experiencing, that rolls it all up into one thing.
Okay.
Right. When I talk about I solve the offer problem, like people are like, well, my website sucks, my positioning sucks, my messaging's confusing, my sales calls are hard. Like those are all the problems that people face when we say you have an offer problem.
Right. Yep.
Right. You don't know. It's hard for you to explain what you do and how you do it.
Yep.
All of those things come together, and I say that's the offer problem. They go, yes, but of course it is. There it is. So that's what I mean when I say choose one to solve. Like combine the necessary ones, rolled up into one, or just pick one, and one of them will generally capture the thing that you need from other ones. So that's the concept.
Okay.
All right.
What's next?
What are the common obstacles to solving the problem? What generally gets in their way? What makes implementation hard? Why would someone fail? Now what we're trying to do is look at what have they done to try and solve this problem in the past? Things like that. You're trying to understand their life in a more complete way.
Yep.
You're trying to understand, because oftentimes we're going to say, oh, well, we've hired this other person before, we've implemented this system before, we've done this other thing before, and it didn't really work for us. So you just want to understand, it's like you got to cover all your bases. How is the thing that you're doing circumvent that? How do you use that obstacle? Most of the people are like, well, this sounds really great. I mean, a simple one that is just, we don't have enough time. Most people are not going to buy stuff from you because they don't have the time. Even if you're like, we'll do it all, they're like, well, we still don't have enough time.
Okay. Yeah.
So how do you turn the obstacle into the solution? But you have to think through those things ahead of time, so that you bake the solution into the cake.
Interesting.
right? So when we framed up full stack, let's think about this one, right? The first thing that we thought about with full stack was, there's people say we don't have enough time to go through this program. It's like, well, there are 3 modules and they're broken out into 10-minute daily lessons.
Right.
Now everyone has 10 minutes.
I
know you have 10 minutes.
I love, it's such an obvious psychological hack, but I love when people are like, oh, you don't have enough money. It's literally just buying a coffee every day for 2 months. Like you're gonna
like it's for the price of a cup of coffee.
Like, I know it's so stupid, but like that always gets me. I'm like, well, that makes sense.
And I'm still gonna buy that cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
So these are things you want to think through. Now, the next step to framing the problem, I say, is like the 3 reasons why the problem exists. There's a difference between symptoms, like reasons why the problem exists, what led to the problem, and then like the symptoms or the ramifications of the problem going unsolved.
Right.
People get these 2 mixed up.
Okay.
You want to use a like forward-facing lens. If you're looking at the problem and you're saying, or let me rephrase that. You want to use basically this backward-facing lens in this moment. You're going to look back and say, this problem exists because these 3 things are present in your life or in your business.
Okay.
You don't have X, Y, or Z things. Then there's the forward-facing lens. That's like, now if you don't deal with this, it will create A, B, or C problems in your life. You might see them coming already.
Right.
You might already be experiencing some of these things. Like, try to attack this thing from all angles. Basically, it says like, well, what is the thing you know is going to create the problem in their life, and then why does that matter in the first place?
Right. It all comes down to problems. This is all problems.
Yeah, this is just straight up problem framing.
Yeah.
It's not, but if you skip all this stuff and you don't think about these things and you go straight into, yeah, I'm a content marketing strategist and we're going to show you our super ding dong way of helping you solve your content problem, like, then you're just a better content marketing strategist, because no one understands why your system, where your system fits.
Talk about point of view, because that's part of this as well, and such an important part.
You have to give a shit about this problem in the thing. Having a unique point of view, I was like, a big problem that people have is what I call the uninsightful insight.
Okay.
Which is basically just like very status quo stuff. It's like not very interesting. And sometimes I don't think what I necessarily have to say is very novel or interesting in that way.
That's just because you've been saying it for a while. That Maybe. Also just happens, I think.
Yeah, that's true. But having a point of view on the problem is your internal dialogue, right? It's your internal narrative. It fuels the whole thing. It sets the tone and the direction for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Doing all this work tees you up to have a complete point of view on the problem, for you to be able to talk about it on podcasts and content, on sales calls, on networking calls, at an event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anywhere you go.
As an example, I think pillars are stupid, which is why after we jammed for a while, we were like, there's got to be a better way. We came up with the MP3 framework: market, the problem, process, and proof. Right. You know, back when I was focusing more on editing, I thought that anyone who said editing is a cutting exercise and that you need to cut 30% out of everything you write was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. And I felt really strongly that editing is actually a value-adding exercise, and sometimes you need to add more into it. And so I had those like very strong point of views that I injected into a lot of what I said, and that helped me stand out. When you make people think about something in a different way, it's really powerful, because, 5 levels of awareness. Some people are going to know that what they're doing doesn't feel quite right. Some people are going to be absolutely shocked the first time that they hear that they might not be doing it right. And then they're going to look back and be like, oh, that's why that didn't feel like this and that. I have been dealing with these symptoms I wasn't aware of, all of that stuff. A lot of that comes from being able to frame up the problem from a strong point of view that you have.
Yeah. And just like, let's just say what it is. Not everyone's going to be in the exact same place on the timeline.
Yep.
So you have to be able to articulate your problem in so many different ways.
Yep.
One, to be able to continue to talk about it forever, but also to get other people to opt in. When we say make the problem highly visible, you have to have a deep understanding of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to understand, well, first of all, what is the thing? What is it? What are the different pain points and whatever, however you want to describe it, the different things that make up the primary problem that you're going to go after? And then what are the reasons it exists? What are the ramifications of that problem going unsolved?
Yep.
What are all those little things? Like I always tell people, how do you describe the way the problem shows up in their work and in their life? The first few times I started doing this myself, when I first launched Harness and Hone, I would get DMs from agency owners that this one woman said to me, she goes, "Do you have a hidden camera in my office?" This is the only way you would know this stuff.
Yeah.
One other one was like, "You've clearly done your homework."
Yep.
And it's not because, I mean, yes, the answer to the first question is no, but the answer to the second question is yes, but you spend the time to think about the problem and frame it all up.
Yep.
That's when you get to those types of DMs.
100%.
Okay, so there's a litmus test. There's a litmus test to validating your problem, right? Is it urgent? Are people looking for solutions? Will people pay to solve it? Is the cost of inaction high? Is the problem urgent? And then is the problem specific? Can you describe it? Do you understand the clear pain points that exist? And it's a measurable, that it's mostly measurable. The desired outcome is tangible. Would someone know when it's solved? Would someone know when you've done or achieved what you've set out to do together?
This I want to pause on, because I have struggled with this so hard. And sometimes you don't know this answer until you've done the work with people. And I just want to put that out there for anyone who's in the middle, like you've just figured all this out and you've got an offer and you're excited. And you might reach a point where you're like, hang on, this actually doesn't seem to have an end point. And I can't figure out when people are like, yep, I've gotten the thing I needed and I'm good. And coaching is one of those things that's really difficult. Like legit coaching, people who have certificates and everything, like they're meant to be there to kind of help you help yourself. And it takes time and it's very intangible. You know, things like therapy are also very intangible.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But sometimes it's not. And for me with content sparring, I'm struggling a lot with that because it is quite intangible. And it's making me realize that even though what I'm doing is valuable, I can do a much better job of making it more tangible or having check-in points. And also I might just pivot, do something else, because that also happens after you launch an offer and then you're like, maybe it's something else. But these are just tough things.
Yeah. So content sparring is a unique beast, and we've been working through this one for a while now. And I think the aha with content sparring is this. It's a gym membership for writers, basically. And
non-writers mostly.
Well, right, for people who want to
Yeah.
improve their writing. And just for all the reasons we talked about, like how better is tough and it's incremental, like we're kind of in that realm. So I'm gonna draw a parallel to the offer creation that I do to content sparring. My program, people generally stick around for 6 to 9 months, somewhere in there. We'll generally get the offer designed, created, and launched between 2 and 4 months. Just kind of depends on certain factors, but that's generally how long it'll take. So why are those two numbers drastically different? Because once we launch, it goes from and this has changed, or the way that I've positioned this has changed, I should say. I used to just position the entire offer as like, we'll launch it and then we'll go into coaching. Now it's just, we're going to launch it and then I've taken that part of the positioning away. We can talk about that later. Here's the point. You root people in the thing that they want to do, create your offer. And then they look at me, a few months right after we launch, and they go, where do we go from here? All right, well, we can do ongoing coaching and advisory, and I'll help you work through all that. Content sparring is like just the latter part. I'll help you work through all that. we've talked about how do we just turn it into basically the launch blueprint where you have an offer to launch or you have a thing, whatever it is that you're trying to do, and you'll help them launch it. Once you help them launch it, there's almost certainly room for ongoing coaching and advisory.
Yep.
So it's a similar play, but it just roots them in the thing, the tangible thing that they're looking to achieve, the thing that you can say you're going to do for them very clearly.
Yeah. And that's why I'm leaning towards starting with launch content. And if they want to stick around for more just general advising, great. But I am craving so hard just being able to be like, we're going to do this thing. We're going to execute this strategy and it will be done. Like there will be an end point.
Yes.
I need that. Like I need that mentally to be like, I've provided value. Like it gets weird when you're like, am I even helping people?
Yeah, definitely. Well, if you don't have a set endpoint or a set outcome or thing, and outcomes, yes, like growth, profitability, scalability, like risk management. Like
for me, it was more like confidence. I sound more like myself. I'm excited to write, like things like that. And it's like, okay, that's good, but we still can't, like, there's no way that tie that to anything tangible.
Right.
Which makes it harder to sell.
Yeah, for certain. There's one point of this problem framing that I have started to add in, actually, that I think is highly relevant.
Okay.
Which I haven't baked out more material on it, but it's a simple concept. What is your inciting event? Generally, if you can understand the factors that kicked this thing off, then you're going to be much further ahead in mind share. So inciting event, there's a lot of different things. You've been laid off from your job and you want to become a consultant and you need an offer, right? Inciting event. You have had a kid. That's an inciting event for a ton of purchases. But you're about to have a child. You've become pregnant. Like inciting event. Your reach on LinkedIn has plummeted. Inciting event. Right? So there's things that are going on. You're losing a lot more deals to status quo. Inciting event. There's a bunch of there's a million things that you could talk about. But they're in various contexts. But the idea is simple. There's something that kicks off this level of frustration that makes the problem, they're more acutely aware of the problem.
Yep.
And you can basically use that inciting event as leverage.
100%.
To make the problem more visible.
Yep.
So now, is that reasons why the problem exists? Potentially. I mean, I think a lot of this is also this concept of slotting. Like, where do all of these different variables fit in the equation? There's no right or wrong answer here. It's just you're going to describe it in all these different ways. This happens and then this happens.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are going to nod. And then you're going to say, well, actually, this happened and then that happened. And they're going to go, or they're going to nod harder. And you're going to be like, that was it. I talk about how niche versus offers and all this stuff. I've told the story like 1,000 times on this show. So I don't need to go into it, but like that was my own experience where once you realize something that people aren't receiving it in the same way that you are intending it to be received, like that communication breakdown is happening, and you reorganize all the different variables and then it's received properly, boom, baby, you're in.
100%. Okay. Are we through the list or is there more?
Let's see. To validate the problem, we said it has to be urgent, it has to be specific, and we said, and it has to be solvable.
Right.
This is, do you have a clear process to solve the problem? Have you solved it before? Can you articulate how it is solved? So this one is more so, this last bullet here isn't necessarily validating that other people are going to sense this problem, but it's more so saying, like, did you lose sight of the things you can do?
Right.
Is this a valid problem for you?
Right. How do people figure out the process of solving it? Like, what if you don't have a unique process? Where do you start with that?
The question of life. It's not the question of life, but it is a question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before you go into how, I suggest people go into who.
Okay.
Because how you solve a problem is very different depending on who you're going to solve for. If you were to solve the content problem for enterprise technology companies, you're going to have a very different process than if you were to solve it for solopreneurs, for mommy bloggers, right? Like whatever the thing is, you're going to have a very different process. So if you build a solution to solve the LinkedIn content problem for people, and then you're like, I'm going to help mommy bloggers. You're like, this is an enterprise content offer. That doesn't match up.
Yeah.
So figure out your who. And your who could be a person or a business or a combination, but who is basically the type of company, right? What size is the company? What's the company industry? What stage is the company? All of these factors are relevant. And I'm saying don't get lost in the sauce here. Do not just say, oh, they're B2B manufacturing. They're plastic injection molding companies. So that's our niche. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just use that as a lens to help you describe the problem even more clearly. Plastic injection molding companies experience a problem in a very different way than a pool installation company would, or that a Series A tech startup would.
Okay.
So don't get lost there. Then there's the people. Businesses are made up of people. So who are the people inside of the company that experience this problem? Some people are really wrapped around on titles. I don't really care too much for titles unless it's like CEO or founder, because everyone else, like the VP of marketing at your company could be the marketing manager at another.
Yep. I think Oren Greenberg, who's someone I worked with last year, he ran a survey I think not a survey. He built this tool. I know he's like a really smart dude. He built this like tool that scraped all of the different marketing titles on LinkedIn. And I think there were like hundreds of different title names for the same function. Just to prove your point.
That tracks.
Mm-hmm.
That totally tracks. So don't get this is reinforcing the fact that you should not get too wrapped around the axle on what is the title. I think it can be helpful, but I don't think it's largely not going to make the biggest difference in the world.
Yeah.
Because org charts, like some companies will have deeper org charts than others. Some people will just make up titles. Some people will have, like, I've talked to like 2-person companies, and this one guy was like, I'm the CMO. And I was like, whatever. Like, I'm not trying to like, look, you're working really hard. I see what you're trying to do, but like, I get that you're trying to identify as a CMO. Like, there's a status thing there. You're trying to there's a level of respect and things that they're trying to do, but like, you just run marketing at this 2-person startup. Like, it's okay.
Yeah. It's completely different.
Being a CMO is a very different role, right? There's a leadership position.
Yes.
Very little marketing gets done by CMOs in that way. So anyway, I don't think that like the CMO of HubSpot compared to the CMO of this person, I think those are 2 very different roles.
It's tough with founders as well, because I call myself a founder. You call yourself a founder. And then there's founders at every level as well.
Correct. You can be the founder of Salesforce.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's definitely there's everything in between. So I would be pretty pressed on using titles. Here's the point. We want to frame it up. I like this idea, and I've changed this up a lot. I think I've settled on one that feels really good because it really emphasizes the timeline aspect of this. So I call it, there's day 1 people.
Mm-hmm.
People who know there's a problem but haven't tried to solve it.
Okay.
There are day 100 people who have tried to solve it but have failed, or they have not succeeded in the way that they think they should be.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's day 1,000 people who are doing it. They may have solved the problem in some way, but they're still doing it wrong, or they're not doing it the way that you think they should be doing it.
So should you market to all 3 of those people?
I think it's the same person. I mean, largely, you're probably going to attract more of one than the other, or of the others. That's just generally just the way it goes, based on what your solution is. But what you're trying to do is understand the full spectrum of person, right? And the easiest way to communicate this to people is to say it's just like situation, but challenge. What's their current situation, despite their current challenge, or like in spite of their current challenge.
Got it.
And so the easiest way to communicate, to have that person opt in, is usually a question. I encourage people to just say it like a question, and it will make your life significantly easier. So for example, right, I would say like, you have expertise that clients value, but you struggle to clearly articulate what makes you different from everyone else. Situation, but challenge.
Right. Cool.
You've got consistent client work, but your custom scoping approach has you working 60 plus hours a week. Situation, but challenge. So what you're trying to do is just put people on the timeline. Basically, you're just taking all like a variety of the problems that you've articulated, that you've listed out when you were framing up your problem, and you were like, here's the thing.
Yep.
Do you have this problem? Is this the problem that you have? Does this sound like you?
Yep. It's amazing how when you do phrase it like this, people are like, holy shit. Like, you're describing me, and I didn't realize that was even me. There's a lot of light bulbs that go off when you describe it like that.
Yeah, and all this stuff too feeds your content. Like this is like the big aha for us as we were going through this. It's like, oh, all of this work is just pumps right into the content engine.
Oh, it's huge. I mean,
and it makes creating content the easiest thing on the planet.
When you do the work of actually going through and figuring out how to frame the problem and who you're solving it for and how you solve it, that you're doing the work of collecting insights that you can then turn into problem content, process content, and proof content, which comes later. But this is the work. Like, everything that you're doing to form up your offer is going to serve you well in your content. And you should talk about all of it in your content.
I also just don't think proof content comes later. If you are lacking proof, go and show people why you think someone else is successful. That's what I did before I had my own case studies. Is I said, here's a person here's a recognizable person or a recognizable business. Let's look at what they're doing and see why they're successful. Most people look at them and think they're successful for this reason. This is what I see when I look at this business. And people go, that resonates with me.
Nice.
So I did not create that success. All I did was just show people the thing. It was like, this is what I see. And then if some people agree, some people disagree, that's great. Who cares? But it's an easy way to overcome the I don't have proof, because the whole thesis of your business should probably be based on the fact that you see a thing, or you've done a thing at a different company or whatever. It's generally something like that. You're going to say, content like this works really, really well. And you say, okay, well, who's doing it well? Oh, this company's doing it really well. Great. Show people that. Yep. That's your proof right now. Start there. You'll make a lot of friends with that company too.
I love it.
Easy peasy. Okay, so that's who. Now that you have who, then you go into how. How is there's a few variables in here, but really there's one big one. What's your plan?
Okay.
Most people don't have a structured plan, or they don't think about it in a structured way. They generally will custom scope stuff. There's a equal, or how do I describe this? Basically, the more you do a thing, the shorter time to value there is.
Okay.
And so the point is that you want to do a thing more often to create value faster. It takes me less time to make an offer today than it did when I first got started. But that's very valuable for people.
Right.
So don't do drastically or radically different things every single time. Just run the same few things and then improve that process. But the process follows a simple flow. By the way, nothing we're talking about here is like, we're not like leaking information. Like, this is everything that we wrote about in the full stack blueprint or the full stack roadmap.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that we teach inside the program. Like, this isn't like magic information that we've never shared before. This is all the same stuff that's in all the stuff that we've ever read.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan is simple. Phase 1, plan your work. Do the strategy.
Yep.
Like, and this is not like, again, this is this structured communication. Can you communicate this stuff in a simple and structured way so that people go, oh, okay, that makes logical sense to how we're going to go do the thing.
Yep.
So when you tell someone the first thing we're going to do together is plan the work. Now, the work is largely already planned. You might call it audit. You might call it an assessment. You might call it whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a very simple, that's the phase. That's the whole point. That's the whole stage or phase or round or whatever you want to call it. Plan it. The second phase is do it. Do the work. Implementation. Are you going to write everyone's blogs for them? Are you going to do that? Like, what is the thing you're going to do? That's when you go and do it. That's it.
What if you're a coach?
It's still, there's a difference between so if you're a coach, it's just as easy. It's just as simple if you're a coach. You just think like the time frames of each phase might be longer or shorter depending on the type of work that you do. It's like for a coach, phase 1, the audit or the planning phase is like, all right, if you've ever been to a therapist, you don't just immediately jump in and start talking about your childhood traumas on the first session, or you might, but like the whole thing is they're not going to sit there and try to like talk you through it. They're just going to like, tell me everything.
Yep.
And they're not going to say a word to you.
It's true. You just ramble for
an hour. And then they're like, okay, that was $250. Thanks.
Yeah.
And then the next session, they'll start getting to work and asking you questions and helping you think through whatever the things that you're trying to work through are.
Yep.
Okay. Planning, implementation.
Yeah.
Right. The first session is, so if you're a coach, it's like, okay, well, like, catch me up. What's your situation? What's going on right now? What are all the things that you're trying to deal with? And let me hear you out. Now, some people are like, oh, well, that's done in the sales process, whatever. Like, it doesn't make a difference. This is the whole point is that we're trying to just structure this in a way that makes logical sense. The second part is, okay, let's work through that challenge.
Right.
Implementation, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Right. Launch, activate. And then phase 3 is optimization. You're going to work in some sort of improvement into the process, which we all do. Nothing is ever perfect the first time. There's some sort of refinement or revision or iteration that takes place in all the work.
Yep.
Right. So if you're writing blogs for someone, you plan the brief, you write the blog, you do the revisions.
Yep.
Right. Then that's it. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Everything goes through the same 4 phases. And once you realize that, you're like, oh, shit. Everything goes through the same 4 phases. And then phase 4 is this maximization or scale phase, whatever you want to call it. Basically, the whole point is like, okay, we did all the thing, and now we need to make the thing. We need to like go beyond that. Is it the next blog? Is it the next problem we're facing? Is it whatever PTSD you have, if you're like a therapist or whatever the thing is that you're trying to help people work through? That's the point.
Yep.
That's it. 4 phases. Plan it, do it, refine it, maximize it.
I think people get stuck a lot in the maximization phase.
Oh yeah. Well, because they split planning into 2 phases and they overcomplicate to death the whole process. Like, people don't largely care. This is not an exercise for you. I mean, this is because it kind of helps you bucket your thinking in terms of what do I need to do to kind of check off these boxes. But the point is to not over-engineer it. The point is to be able to clearly communicate it.
Okay. So speaking of clearly communicating it, we had a guy, Zach, in Full Stack who followed the 4 phases, and he created a really complex deck where he was walking everyone through it, and you were like, simplify. Yes. You don't need to do all that. So I think a lot of people, speaking of overcomplication, they don't just overcomplicate it for themselves. They then try to overcomplicate it for their client. Not try to, but they end up overcomplicating it for their clients or on their discovery calls, Why is it important to just simplify everything, especially at that stage?
I mean, simple things are easier to understand. It's not like it's just this weird. We want it to be complicated to make it seem like it's going to be so much harder, and you absolutely need us.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's so complicated, like there's a gap, because once you get too close to overcomplicated and over-engineered, then you leak into transformation. And transformation, I advise people to stay away from transformation, because most people can't manage a transformation.
Interesting. What do you mean? Can you talk more about that? What do you mean by that?
Transformation is risky. The person who had advocated for it, who is putting their neck on the line to hire, like there are transformation, like agile transformation specialists, like this is a thing.
Okay.
There are businesses out there that specialize in literally revolutionizing the way your business operates.
Okay.
Because it is hard. It is extraordinarily risky. If it fails, you could piss off and destroy the morale of your workforce. If you could burn a shitload of money that you may or may not have. Like there's a lot that goes into it. And the person that's spearheading it is probably going to lose their job if this doesn't work out. Right? Transformation. Like I don't advise people to be in the transformation business. It's too big. It's very intangible once you get into transfer. Like, how will we know we have been transformed? When will the transformation take place? Like you're like, where's the cocoon? When will we become a beautiful butterfly? It's just not worth it.
Maybe it's a semantics thing, because I feel like every single person out there who gives advice on how to write a headline is like, talk about the transformation. Go from this to that.
Yeah, so this is very nuanced advice.
Okay.
Which I think we have lost the plot on. I agree that the hook or the headline should articulate the transformation.
Okay.
But when the transformation is move to Boca Raton, Florida, buy a house, and like that's, if you're just like, hey, are you living in Detroit right now and you want to move to Boca Raton and buy a nice house and a Ferrari and do all this other shit, like that's a transformation. It's a super specific thing. When they say transformation, it's like there's a from to in all of us.
Right.
All the work that we do takes people from somewhere, generally from some status quo, to somewhere else.
Yep.
But we lose the plot on what the word transformation means, and we make it way too big.
Okay.
So if the transformation is way too big and they're like, revolutionize your business.
I mean, what does that even mean? Like,
that's the point.
Yeah.
Versus just saying, like, optimize your lifetime value of each customer. Like, oh, okay, that will revolutionize my business.
Yep. What about like go from like, I don't know, totally like unaligned, siloed work to, operational clarity and everyone's happy and yay.
I mean, you're getting bigger there, but I think so all right, I'll give you a really specific example. The agency I used to work for, right? It was a full court press to do the work that we did. You had to have the entire company had to be involved in the work.
Okay. I was going to say, yeah, could you explain the basketball sports reference, please, to people?
The whole company had to be involved in doing this work.
Mm-hmm.
It was everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And you lose a lot of deals when they're like, we need everybody. And you're like, everybody.
Okay.
Even people you haven't hired yet. Like, you got to hire people for this shit too. And we're going to need them. And they're like, holy fuck. Like, this is going to be a bit. It's going to be a bit. It's expensive, right? To peel off capacity from every single person in the company to like understand this stuff, whether they're meeting with you or they're meeting internally to talk about you. Like, there's a lot of shit that comes along with transformation. So you lose a lot of deals. Now, granted, we were charging like $10 to $25,000 a month, depending on the engagements, to do this work, because it's super labor intensive. It takes a lot of training and coaching to develop leaders and skills inside of these companies to run this play, to change the way that they operate, the way that they think about. In our case, it was, how do they create marketing material and how do they sell the thing that they do? How do they build trust online through their content, all that shit?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a physical therapy office and you have 15 therapists, how do you get them involved in the whole process? Like, the whole thing about like, how do you get their expertise and write content about it and get them to become a little bit more known and be faces and blah, 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 blah. Here's the point. Everyone needs to be involved. It's massive. It's a massive undertaking. Most of us are not in the business of doing that.
Right.
Right. It's just too much. And there's no need to do that. There's just no need.
Okay.
So back off, right? But make the transformation. So your point, everyone says, well, highlight the transformation. Yes. Highlight the from to. Where's the thing they are and what's the thing they're going to get?
Yeah.
A transformation in my world is like, you have an offer. Like, that's a transformation.
Go from not having an offer to having an offer. Yeah.
To having an offer that you can not only market, but also sell in a very simple way.
Right. So there's transformation, like lowercase t, which is the good kind. And then there's transformation uppercase T, which is the one you want to avoid.
I just don't, I think, look around, right? Like, let's look around at all of the people who we think are objectively successful that we try to model a lot of, the most of us see, especially floating around LinkedIn, that are like objectively successful. Very few of them, especially if they're solo or like very small, like a few people are in the transformation business. The vast majority of them are like point solution. If you think about it, like they're solving a very specific thing. They're doing a specific thing. You're going to take you to a very specific place.
Yep.
Right. Then you get into like some of the bigger companies. And I think like, so an easy example of this that a lot of people will get is like Refine Labs. They were like, we need to revolutionize the way that you're generating demand for your business, for your tech company. Right. We need to rethink everything about your demand architecture.
Yep.
We're going to run your revenue like an R&D business. We're going to whatever, right? They had this whole point of view on this shit. I think they've since changed. I don't keep too many tabs on what they're doing, but here's the point. People were paying them like $25,000 a month to do this work.
Right.
Plus ad spend. So like, yeah, they could be in the transformation business. That's a different thing. They have a shitload of resources and all this stuff. So you don't have to be in that business. You're not trying to like compete with Refine Labs or like compete with Impact, who's like trying to transform other marketing and sales departments of these other types of companies.
Yeah.
So
especially if you're a solo, like you don't have the resources.
It's not necessary. Look at my friend Brendan Huffer. I think Brendan Huffer is like not only one of the nicest people on the planet or one of the funniest people on the planet, but he also is such a great example of like, how do you take something that's like really, really big, make it really, really expensive, and also like make it really, really tangible. It's like, here's the transformation. You're not generating revenue from this part of your content marketing experience, and we're going to turn it into a place that does generate revenue. You can charge you X many thousands of dollars over the course of X many weeks for a sprint. He calls it a growth sprint. And it's like, this isn't transformative, but he makes a boatload and he sells it. It's an extraordinarily expensive program.
Right.
So you don't need to go that far out. No, reputation and efficacy and all this other shit comes into play there, which like in terms of how much you can charge, like he's a known quantity. He has a lot of like, there's a lot of, he's done it a lot. There are a lot of people that can vouch for the quality of work, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So we don't need to go too deep into any of that. But here's the point. To wrap this up. Back off the transformation.
Okay. Heard. Understood.
Okay, so that's it. That's problem, person, process. What problem you solve, who do you solve for, how do you solve it? Core competency, what can you do, all that stuff. That's the order in which we talk about it. That's the order in which we encourage people to go through it. Because if you do it in this order, it will help you more get to the end result, a more refined end result, without having to go back and redo a bunch of bullshit.
Hell yeah.
All right.
We did it.
Next time, more stuff. That's not it. There's more here. There's plenty more to go, but I think that's enough for today.
That's enough for today. It's a really good place to start. And if you want to learn more, if anyone's listening to this and hasn't gone through the Full Stack Solo roadmap, which is our educational email course.
Yes, we'll link it in the
show notes because that is the written version of everything we just said.
Yeah. Maybe I'll chop this up into videos and we'll put the videos in the email course.
Hell yeah.
Look at us. Marketing, repurposing our work. Alrighty.
All right.
Till next time.
Till next time.